It didn't happen in a single moment. There was no dramatic explosion, no clear line that marked the beginning of the betrayal. It started with the smallest shifts, so small that they almost went unnoticed. Almost. The first sign was the silence. Not ordinary silence, but the kind that thickens a room the moment the door opens. 1 second, voices murmured behind walls. The next, they cut off abruptly, replaced by forced smiles and eyes that looked everywhere except where truth lived. The mother-in-law would fold papers with unnecessary speed. The brother-in-law would tuck his phone face down. And the husband would clear his throat as if pretending nothing had happened made the lie disappear. But silence doesn't erase reality. It reveals it. Then came the missing documents papers moved from drawers where they had been untouched for years. Insurance files that mysteriously vanished and reappeared in the wrong places. Inheritance forms shuffled around like someone was preparing pieces for a game no one else knew they were playing. When questions were asked, the responses came too quickly, too smoothly. Oh, maybe you misplaced it. You must be forgetting things. You worry too much. Each dismissal felt rehearsed. Each explanation carried a quiet accusation. And the husband, he stood beside them, nodding along, never defending, never questioning. His silence didn't just sting. It clarified. A decision had been made without permission. The third sign came wrapped in politeness. Decisions about the family, about property, finances, responsibilities were suddenly made in private. Not discussed. Not shared. Finalized. Each time a choice was presented as already settled, it felt like another piece of life was being taken away. The husband brushed it off as minor details, but the smirk he exchanged with the family said otherwise. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. A strategy designed to push someone out without ever saying the words aloud. A slow erasing. A rewriting of roles, of importance, of existence within the family. She was being positioned as an outsider in her own home, one subtle cut at a time. It became clearer when conversations shifted in tone-gentle words, layered with hidden meaning. Comments about contribution. Remarks about not fitting in. Questions about worth, choices, character. None said outright, but each one placed like a brick, forming a wall around her. A wall they hoped she would eventually accept as the border of her new, smaller life. And the husband, the man who once promised protection, became a stranger. His eyes hardened in ways they never had before. He began echoing the family's whispers, softening them with fake concern. Maybe they're right. You've changed. You've become difficult lately. Difficult. The word they use when someone refuses to disappear. Then came the ultimate confirmation. A conversation overheard at a moment she wasn't meant to return home. The mother-in-law's voice, sharp and cruel, slicing through air like a blade. Once she's out of the way, everything will be ours. The brother-in-law's answer was just as cold. She won't see it coming. He'll handle the rest. And the husband's voice sealed everything. She's too trusting. This will be easy. Trusting. Not anymore. The world didn't collapse in that moment. It rebuilt itself. The illusion of family shattered, but clarity rose in its place. Every shift, every missing document, every halted conversation, every careful move, they all aligned into one undeniable truth. They weren't just pushing her out. They wanted to erase her completely, erase her presence, erase her identity, erase her claim to any part of the life she had built. But plans built on deceit always underestimate the quiet strength of the one they target. What they didn't know, what they never imagined, was that every shadow they hid in, every lie they whispered, every step they took to erase her was another step toward their own collapse. Because the moment their plan became clear, a new resolve began to rise. They tried to erase her. But karma moved faster. It was the calmness that exposed him, not a word, not an action, not even a slip of the tongue. Just a calmness too perfect, too measured for someone who claimed to be unaware of the storm forming beneath the floorboards of their home. While betrayal thickened in quiet corners and plans were sketched in whispers he pretended not to hear, he stood at the center of it all with a stillness that revealed everything. His silence did not protect. It permitted. It encouraged. It confirmed. When conversations halted the moment someone entered the room, he didn't question it. He simply looked up with that same gentle expression he wore when he wanted to seem harmless. When documents disappeared or were replaced with new versions, he didn't ask why. He shrugged and acted as though the world simply misplaces things by accident. When decisions were made without consent, he wasn't surprised. He acted as if they had always been that way. Pretending not to know was his talent, but knowing too much was his truth. He carried himself with the ease of a man who believed he had covered every track. His eyes revealed nothing, his voice stayed steady, and his smiles were crafted with precision. He played ignorance as though it were a shield, but in reality, it was a confession one he didn't realize was already unraveling. The first clue came in how he responded to tension in the room. Every time his family snapped at her or dismissed her concerns, he didn't defend. He didn't comfort. He didn't intervene. He simply watched, observed, assessed. His calmness wasn't neutral. It was participation without fingerprints. He became the bridge between their lives and her confusion, never speaking the words himself, but always standing beside those who did. Never raising accusations, but always nodding when someone else did. Never delivering the blow, but always handing them the weapon. And yet, when confronted with even the smallest truth, his reaction was always the same, a too soft, too smooth denial. I had no idea. I wasn't involved. They're just stressed. You're overthinking things. Overthinking. Another word meant to silence. But the truth hides in patterns, and his pattern was impossible to ignore. He stopped looking her directly in the eyes when decisions were discussed. He avoided certain topics with such precision it became obvious he was hiding something. He took late-night calls and spoke in whispers he thought were too quiet to hear. He left rooms abruptly when conversations veered toward financial matters. He started acting protective of his family, protective in a way that meant shielding them from consequences, not from pain. And each time something suspicious happened, he was the first to suggest letting it go. The first to downplay it, the first to dismiss it, the first to insist she was imagining things. But imagination cannot move documents. Imagination cannot forge signatures. Imagination cannot rewrite wills. Imagination cannot make someone avoid the truth so aggressively. There was a moment, small but piercing, when everything snapped into clarity. A moment when the mask slipped. It happened during a gathering when a relative mentioned an inheritance discussion that she wasn't supposed to know about. His head whipped around too fast, too sharply, as if caught off guard by a secret that wasn't meant to surface. He tried to recover, smiling with that same calm expression, but his eyes gave him away. There was fear there, brief, sharp, unmistakable. He wasn't pretending anymore. He was exposed. That single reaction revealed more truth than months of silence. His alliances were not new. He had been part of this long before she sensed anything was wrong. The lies he told were not spoken, they were lived. His calmness wasn't innocence. It was a practice performance meant to keep her powerless while he helped build the very walls that cornered her. Every betrayal she discovered later, every forged document, every whispered conspiracy, every secret exchange carried his fingerprints, even if he tried to wash them away. The husband who pretended not to know was the man who knew the most. And the silence he hid behind became the very thing that exposed him. The family always presented themselves as a picture-perfect unit smiling through gatherings, speaking gently in public, greeting guests with warmth that felt almost theatrical. But perfection is a fragile mask, and cracks begin to show the moment truth presses against it. What once looked like unity slowly started revealing the truth beneath the surface. Not love, not loyalty, but a network stitched together by jealousy, resentment, and lies. The first signs were subtle. The way their smiles never reached their eyes. The way their compliments stumbled as if they had to remind themselves what kindness sounded like. The way conversations shifted the second the topic strayed too close to anything real. They hovered like actors on a stage, rehearsed lines ready, expressions polished, each of them desperate to keep the illusion alive. But illusions demand sacrifice. And in this family, the sacrifice was always the same person, the one they wanted erased. Their sympathy came in well-timed phrases spoken without emotion. "We're just concerned. You need to think about your behavior. You're making things difficult." Concerns wrapped in poison. Sympathy sharpened into blame. Advice that sounded like threats. Every time a conflict surfaced, they gathered together like an audience, whispering judgments behind cupped hands, their voices laced with resentment carried for years. The husband stood among them, not as a partner but as an accomplice, his presence quiet but complicit. Their faces softened whenever he entered the room, their tone sweetened, their words careful. But the moment attention shifted, their true expressions returned cold, calculating, hateful. Love didn't bind them. Their lies did. The mother held the throne, her pride brittle, ready to shatter if anyone dared question her authority. She protected her reputation with the desperation of someone who feared exposure, because beneath the surface lived mistakes, regrets, and a venomous envy she had nurtured for years. Her forced warmth evaporated the moment she didn't feel admired. The daughter-in-law became her easiest target, a threat to the perfect narrative she wanted the world to believe. The brother carried resentment like a second skin. Every success achieved by someone else felt like a theft of his own worth. He smiled too widely at victories that weren't his. He lingered too long near opportunities he never earned. And when everything was handed to him, wealth, importance, attention, he accepted it with a smugness that revealed exactly how long he'd been waiting. The husband, quiet but observant, fed their insecurities like breadcrumbs leading to the same conclusion. She was the enemy. His silence was not neutrality. It was strategic. He knew which words to leave out, which moments to twist, which stories to soften until they suited the narrative he wanted the family to believe. And they believed him, not because he was convincing, but because they wanted a villain. Family dinners felt like interrogations dressed in politeness. Every question carried a hidden meaning. Every glance carried a quiet accusation. Every silence carried an agreement. Their unity was not support, it was conspiracy. They protected each other not out of love, but out of fear that exposure would shatter the house of cards they'd built. Their secrets overlapped, their lies interlocked. Each one depended on the other, staying silent, staying loyal, staying committed to the illusion. But the more tightly they clung to their lies, the more obvious their cracks became. The mother's fake sympathy slipped when anger rose too quickly. The brother's calmness disappeared whenever his entitlement was questioned. The husband's silence grew sharper whenever truth came too close to his role in the deception. What they didn't anticipate was that lies age faster than truth. They rot, they leak. They leave stains that can't be scrubbed away. The family bound by lies didn't realize that those same lies would eventually bind them to their downfall. Every secret they kept to protect their image became another thread pulling them closer to collapse. And every lie told to erase her became the very reason she rose stronger than they ever expected. Because a family built on lies may stand together, but only until the truth decides it's time to make them fall. Their confidence was their weakest point. When people believe they've already won, they stop hiding their footprints. They grow careless, relaxed, sloppy. And in that carelessness, they leave behind the very evidence that destroys them. It began with a phone that vibrated where it shouldn't have been left on the kitchen counter instead of tucked into a pocket. A screen lighting up with a preview of a message that was never meant to be seen. She won't be a problem much longer. A single line, short, sharp, damning. It came from the brother. But the reply deleted immediately when the husband realized the message had been noticed belonged to the husband. Even without reading it, the timing and the panic in his eyes told the truth. The conversation wasn't new. It wasn't accidental. It had been ongoing discussions about removing someone from the family, from decisions, from inheritance, from existence. After that first crack appeared, more began to surface. Old bank statements tucked behind newer ones, showing large transfers the husband had no reason to make. Money quietly moved into an account with the brother's name attached masked under labels like repairs, shared expenses, or family support, but the numbers betrayed the intentions. They weren't helping anyone. They were building a foundation to cut someone out. Then came a notebook found in a drawer that had always belonged to her. Not a single sentence in her handwriting, only the mother-in-law's slanted script and dates that coincided with events that suddenly made sense. Meetings, lawyers, discussions about the future of the family. The future. A future they planned without her in it. Handwritten notes outlined steps, concerns, and lies that would be said if necessary. She's irresponsible. She doesn't care about the family. She's unstable. Lies prepared in advance, like weapons polished before war. The brother's eagerness showed in every financial trace he failed to cover. He bought things he never could have afforded before the inheritance shift new electronics. Expensive clothing, luxury items that hinted at a lifestyle he didn't earn. Receipts forgotten in coat pockets, bags shoved into closets, invoices paid from accounts that were supposed to be untouched. The mother's slip came in the form of a recorded message she didn't know she left behind. A voicemail, accidental but deadly, left after she thought she had hung up. Make sure she signs nothing. Once everything transfers, she's out. Her voice, her plan, her downfall. But it was the husband's evidence that struck deepest. A folder in the back of his laptop, poorly hidden, mislabeled as work documents. Inside were messages exported from chats. Conversations with the family discussing how to convince her to step back, how to shift responsibilities, how to avoid giving her access to anything that could complicate the process. He was the architect of the plan. He guided the mother's resentment. He assured the brother of his entitlement. He manipulated situations to make her look disinterested or irresponsible. He twisted narratives, exaggerated moments, planted doubts. Piece by piece, he had been removing her, not physically, but emotionally, socially, financially, spiritually, rewriting her identity until the family no longer saw her as someone who belonged. But every trap they laid left dust behind, and dust settles exactly where the truth needs to be seen. There were documents with mismatched signatures, emails where dates didn't match their stories, a conversation where the brother bragged to a friend about getting everything soon, a bank notification the husband forgot to delete, a whispered exchange between the mother and husband caught through a half-open door. She blamed herself. That's the best part. Their cruelty was not impulsive. It was designed. And yet, their arrogance, the belief that she would never notice, never fight back, never piece together the fragments of their betrayal, became the very reason everything began to unravel. The evidence they didn't mean to leave behind told a clearer story than their words ever could. It showed planning, coordination, conspiracy. It revealed how they tried to erase someone by stealing her name, her rights, her worth. But evidence has a strange kind of power. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. And once collected, it becomes a weapon sharper than any lie they ever told. The clues they hid with confidence became the ruin they never saw coming. The moment the truth surfaced, not fully, but in enough fragments to form a pattern, the instinctive reaction should have been rage. A storm, a confrontation loud enough to shake the walls they plotted behind. But instead, something else emerged. Something quieter. Something sharper. Silence, not fear. Not shock. Silence with purpose. The family expected yelling, accusations, desperate attempts to reclaim the pieces they tried to take. They expected tears, emotional outbursts, and a collapse they could use as further ammunition. They had spent so long painting her as unstable, dramatic, irrational, that silence was the last weapon they ever prepared for. So silence became strategy. Every message uncovered, every forged signature found, every financial trail traced, every whispered conversation remembered, each one was collected with steady hands, a calm heart and a mind slowly shaping a plan. Not revenge driven by rage, but by clarity. The truth didn't need noise. It needed time. The husband continued pretending nothing was wrong, still carrying that controlled calmness that had once fooled everyone. The mother wrapped herself in self-righteousness, convinced her lies were airtight. The brother walked with the confidence of someone who thought he had already won. They didn't notice the way conversations were listened to more carefully. They didn't see the subtle shifts in expression when their stories didn't align. They didn't realize how every detail was being filed away with precision. Quiet revenge doesn't announce itself. It waits. It waits for the moment when truth is undeniable. It waits for the moment when arrogance blinds the guilty. It waits for the moment lies become heavy enough to collapse under their own weight. And they were growing heavier by the day. The mother whispered contradictions, little slips she quickly tried to correct. The husband repeated lies with small differences each time, never remembering the version he told before. The brother bragged too loudly, joked too easily, exposed too much without noticing. Their entire plan was built on secrecy, yet they talked carelessly because they believed the person they targeted was already defeated. They never knew how closely they were being watched. The days grew quieter, colder. The house became a collection of shadows where truth moved silently, slipping into cracks they left behind. Evidence was gathered not to confront them, but to prepare for something deeper, exposure. Silence turned into observation. Observation turned into understanding. Understanding turned into strategy. The goal was no longer to fight them directly. The goal was to let them fight themselves. And they did. They argued over details they once agreed upon. They snapped at each other over small mistakes. They panicked when documents didn't line up. They whispered anxiously when the husband asked the wrong questions in front of the wrong person. Their alliance, built on lies, began cracking from the inside long before any truth was revealed. Quiet revenge is not about striking first. It is about letting the enemy believe they are safe while tightening the rope around their own mistakes. The husband, still playing innocent, had no idea how much of his deceit had already been uncovered. The mother believed her moral authority was unshakable, unaware that her own words were now recorded proof of her plotting. The brother strutted with entitlement, never noticing how his financial carelessness was being documented piece by piece. They lived in the comfort of their illusion. She lived in the certainty that illusions eventually collapse. The silence in the house changed. It no longer felt like oppression, it felt like preparation. Each interaction became a chance to collect more information. Each lie they spoke became another thread to pull on. Each contradiction they revealed became another crack opening wider. No shouting. No confrontation. No need. The truth was being carved with patience, shaped with intention, strengthened with every passing day. She didn't need to destroy them. They were destroying themselves. The only task was to gather the pieces, arrange them in the right order, and wait for the moment when the truth could no longer be ignored by them, by anyone watching, by the world they pretended to impress. Quiet revenge is the sharpest kind, because it ends with only one sentence. They never saw it coming. Karma didn't arrive like a storm, loud, chaotic, destructive. It arrived softly, quietly, almost politely, slipping through the cracks their lies have left open. At first, no one noticed. They were too comfortable, too confident, too certain that the world would never see what they hid. But karma has patience, and it knows when to strike. It began with a single question from someone they didn't expect, a distant relative who had heard whispers of changes in the family's finances. The mother stumbled over her explanation, offering contradictions she didn't realize she'd given before. Her voice, once so sharp and commanding, trembled slightly. That tremble was the first small fracture. Then came the paperwork. A lawyer reviewing the transferred assets found inconsistencies, signatures that didn't match, dates that overlapped with documented travel, clauses that appeared to be added after the original contract. The mother called it a misunderstanding. The brother called it a clerical error. The husband insisted he had never seen the documents, that lies rot when exposed to daylight. The lawyer requested more information. More documents, more signatures, more explanations. And with every request, panic spread like smoke through their perfect world. Their empire, built on deceit, began to tilt. The brother was the first to crack. His spending habits, hidden transfers, and luxury purchases he couldn't justify came to light. Investigators questioned him, and under pressure, he shifted blame. He pointed fingers at the husband, claiming he was the mastermind. But his voice wavered, his confidence shattered. When even one part of a lie collapses, every other part begins to wobble. The mother, furious at her son for exposing their coordinated betrayal, lashed out. Her anger, once reserved privately, erupted publicly. Relatives overheard her raging, spewing insults that contradicted the image she'd maintained for decades. The mask she wore for the world slipped completely, revealing the resentment and jealousy she had hidden so well. And then the husband, always the calmest liar, finally faced consequences. Messages he thought deleted resurfaced ironically through a cloud backup he forgot he enabled. Texts that revealed manipulation. Voice notes where he coached the family on what to say. A recording where he mocked the very person he claimed to protect. His silence, once his greatest tool, now became evidence. His family tried to distance themselves from him. He tried to paint them as the orchestrators. Everyone tried to save themselves, but the truth bound them together in guilt. Their alliances collapsed. Their trust dissolved. Their unity shattered, and people noticed. Neighbors, once fooled by their polite smiles, now whispered the real story. Relatives who believed their claims now questioned everything. Friends who admired their family values now watched them drown in the consequences of their choices. Their reputation, something they prized more than morality, crumbled faster than they ever imagined. The perfect image they clung to began to peel away layer by layer until all that remained was the truth. They were liars, manipulators, and cowards. The legal consequences followed next. The forged documents prompted an investigation. The financial lies required audits. The inheritance scheme triggered legal disputes. Everything they buried clawed its way back to the surface. And through it all, the quiet observer they tried to erase stood untouched. Not triumphant, not cruel, but steady. Because karma didn't need her hands to guide it, karma moved on its own, powered by the very betrayals they committed. She watched them unravel at their own pace, each of them falling into the traps they built. She didn't speak. She didn't intervene. She didn't strike. She simply let truth do what truth always does, expose. When the dust settled, their empire was gone. The mother lost the respect she fought so hard to control. The brother lost the wealth he stole. The husband lost everything: family, trust, and the illusion of innocence. And the one they tried so desperately to erase walked away not just whole, but stronger. Not because she won, but because they lost to their own darkness. Karma always knows where to land. Thank you for watching this episode. If you felt the sting of betrayal in today's story, or the satisfaction of karma finally striking back, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. More secrets are waiting. More lies are ready to crack. And karma is just getting started. Stay tuned, your next story begins soon.